Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the SocaMom Summit. I'm Eva from SocaMom.com. And if you're just getting here, I hope that you are enjoying everything so far. Right now, we are here to talk about mental health. The title of this is An Intimate Discussion of Mental Health in the Caribbean Community. So that's not something that we even discuss, let alone have an intimate discussion. So this is something very, very special. We have Jamie of jblessed.com and we have Seneca of Ask Coach Sen. She's at senecawilliams.com. So we're going to just talk about how everyone's dealing with this crisis and how we're dealing with the stigma of mental health issues in our community. We have kind of a compounded situation here. We don't like to be closed in. We don't like to be inside all the time. Even our introverts need to be out every now and then. So we're going to talk about all of that. And we're also going to talk about what it's like to do this with kids. So this is going to be a very, very special discussion. So we're going to start off with the ladies introducing themselves, telling you a little bit about themselves and what got them interested in promoting mental health in our community. We'll start with Jamie.
Hi, I am J Blessed and representing Trinidad and Tobago. I immigrated here when I was 18, and since being in America, it has really shifted my perspective on a lot of things. And so over the years, I've had to come to terms with the fact that growing up in the Caribbean really, really made me unaware of my own mental health issues, the mental health issues that ran in my family, and how I deal with things on a daily basis based on how I was raised. So I've taken the initiative a few years ago to really pursue this head on by addressing stigmas and stereotypes, by using my platform and my voice to have these discussions within the Caribbean community, things that people don't like to talk about, like mental health and therapy and medication for the mind and incest and rape, and a lot of different things that a lot of our people have endured. And so I'm grateful to have this platform. Thank you, Eva, for the SocaMom Summit. But I'm thankful for allies like Seneca and other people within the community who are using their voice to bring awareness to breaking the stigma of mental health issues.
Awesome, awesome. Now, Seneca, tell us a little bit about yourself and what drew you to discuss this.
Hello, thank you all for having me. My name is Seneca Williams. You can find me on social media as Ask Coach Sen, and I'm an online therapist and career coach for women careerpreneurs and entrepreneurs who are looking to upgrade their careers or businesses. So for me, I forgot to mention, I'm representing St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That's where I was born, but I was raised in Brooklyn in the heart of Crown Heights and East Flatbush, which is, for many people, they know that's where many West Indians live. So I got the perspective of mental health in the Caribbean, not only from my upbringing in a Caribbean household, but also Caribbean Americans as well. And what got me interested in mental health wasn't only my own personal experiences of mental health and not being aware as I was growing up that I was experiencing anxiety, or I was experiencing depression, or I was experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. I didn't know how to identify it as I got older and I began the study of psychology when I was in high school. Over the 20-something years of studying psychology, realizing that in the Caribbean community, three of the major challenges are the history of mental health. Much of the Caribbean, their model of mental health has been the model that was brought over by the British, which is mental health asylums, or some people know madhouse. So if you were, considered mad, you'd be locked away probably forever and never see your family. So that was one of the major things that I realized was why we have issues with mental health. Also, socioeconomic status. Many people who live in poorer communities, Black and brown people, often they go to these large agencies and sometimes they are misdiagnosed or they're diagnosed more severely. They're diagnosed with psychotic features sometimes when it's not that, because of the lack of cultural awareness and understanding that culture, which leads to stigma. So many people are, going through all kinds of emotions and feelings and not realizing it's mental health. They don't know how to take care of their own mental health. And as moms, not knowing how to take care of your mental health, you are a model for your children, not being able to provide that help for them to know how to navigate their feelings and their thoughts and emotions.
So if you want to know more about Seneca's background, which is really, really interesting, and some of it is very parallel to mine, but very, very interesting, please listen to episode 34. Am I correct?
All right.
Yes, episode 34. I listened to it. I loved it. Episode 34 of Jay Blessed podcast in my head. Okay, you got to listen to it. It's worth every second. And I get a shout out too. So, I'm just saying. So we're going to jump right into it. I was thinking when all of this was happening, what would I have done when I was a single parent? Because I have been a single parent before. So what would I have done as a single parent in a crisis like this? I might have lost my mind because my child was my world, my earth, everything. And then you add this on top of it, where all you can think about is, do I have Pampers? Do I have enough milk? Do I have toilet paper? Do I have paper towels, baby wipes? All the things that people are hoarding right now. You have to go to work, worry about your kid, all of these different things. And then for some people, if you are lucky enough to be able to work from home, you got to be a teacher on top of that. How do you deal with the pressures that come from all of that, especially for single mothers? I'll start with Seneca. Talk to us a little bit about some strategies to deal with that.
First of all, let's acknowledge what is happening right now. Let's acknowledge the reality. I think some people, they just jumped into business as usual and they're trying to carry on life as normal. And this is a new normal. If your house burnt down, if someone in your family died, if you lost your job, it wouldn't be business as usual. You would have time to grieve and process these emotions and feel your feelings. You would have that time, but many people have been, not by choice, pushed into these roles of working from home and homeschooling their children like a light switch, like overnight. So first of all, acknowledging that this is not the normal that we had pre-COVID. Currently, what we're going through is a crisis, and it's actually pretty traumatic what we're experiencing. When you're seeing people on your social media timelines dying and all of that, you have to acknowledge that. So that's one thing, acknowledge your emotions. The second thing is now you have to create a new routine for yourself. And this new routine is going to include some adjustments, not like your old routines where you have like 10 things on your to-do list. You might only be able to get through 3 things on your to-do list during a crisis, during this time. So I tell people, break things down into miniature tasks, not only for you, but for your kids. They're dealing with this trauma too. You can't throw them into homeschool. It's not a vacation. It's not a party. It's not fun. Like, they're processing all these emotions too. So for you and your kids, creating a new routine with miniature tasks. And in between those tasks, you're going to need more frequent breaks because you're exhausted. You're tired. This is a lot of processing. And then the next thing is filtering information. You are a model for your children. So if you're constantly watching the news, worried about this, talking about this, that's what they're going to absorb. So routines, miniature tasks, frequent breaks, filtering out the news.
Jamie, you talk to a lot of women about their mental health before the crisis, during the crisis, and you're an advocate for Caribbean women and their mental health. It's something that, like Seneca was saying, you are so focused on not being called crazy. You know, it's not the asylum culture that it used to be, even in America, because we had the British system too. So, you know, if you don't act right, you're going to end up in Bellevue, or you're going to end up in St. Elizabeth. So you're going to end up in all these different places. How have the women you've been talking to, how have they been expressing themselves and talking about their need for services and what they need from a community and from mental health professionals?
So the great thing about a podcast is that you can anonymously listen, right? And so I have a lot of listeners who would never say publicly that they listen to the podcast. And though I have those that would share the message with others, I've found that a lot of women feel free now when they hear of my stories or those of my guests, sharing their vulnerability and understanding that there's power in being vulnerable. There's power in, owning and living your truth. I've found that a lot of women have reached out to say that they've started therapy, to say that, I've broke it down in a way that they can relate to, and given them hope that there is an option, because they felt like they've exhausted all of their other options and really wasn't giving therapy or just talking about their feelings a chance. Mostly in part because of, again, stigma. Mostly in part because growing up in a Caribbean household, we weren't really allowed to talk about our feelings, especially in a lot of Caribbean households where you're forced to be an overachiever. What do you mean you feeling sad? Shake yourself off. What do you mean you're feeling depressed? You have everything, you have a job, you have a husband. It's almost as if because you have these things, you're not supposed to deal with anxiety. You're not supposed to feel depressed. You're not supposed to, you just had a baby. So what do you mean you're depressed because you had a baby? Go and hug up your child. Not understanding that, listen, we are all people. And sometimes, mental health problems are not just based on your circumstances. A lot of times it's biological. So a lot of people in the Caribbean community have a history of mental health issues, not even aware that they do. And so I'm grateful for that. In addition to a lot of the women that do take up the mantle to take their lives into their own hands and seek help for the trauma they have not dealt with in the past or what they're presently dealing with. They're now ambassadors of mental health to help the men in their lives, because a lot of Caribbean men, ladies, what, a doctor for my mind going to the own thoughts and therapist? They ain't trying to hear about it. So I'm happy now that there is a shift in the paradigm when it comes to talking about our feelings. There's a shift in our culture where people are being a little bit more forthcoming to admit about their flaws and shortcomings. And I'm grateful that the podcast has been a platform where people can actually listen and feel like they're not alone.
So, Seneca, what kind of shift have you been seeing? Because Jamie just said that we're a little more open to talking about our mental health issues, and our kids are online. They're seeing all sorts of things. They're seeing kids talk about their depression, kids that are not in their actual social circle. So it's not just Caribbean kids that they're meeting, right? I would never, with any friends that I knew when I was younger who were of Caribbean descent, I would never talk about, oh, I feel depressed, because I'm expecting them to have the same reaction, even if they don't feel to have that same reaction, like, oh girl, like you're saying, just sit down. You'll be fine. Go eat something, go to church. You're not, even though they want to tell you, I understand, it's okay. It's still in you. So when you're raising your own kids, how are you dealing with talking about mental health with them? How much of your culture impacts the way that you speak with them? I'll start with Seneca.
So culturally, I'd have to piggyback off of what Jamie said. I wasn't allowed to talk about emotions or feelings at home. And it's not something that I can even blame my parents for. It was passed down. For many parents, they only knew how to discipline. But in these households in the Caribbean, there was a lot of domestic violence, child abuse, substance abuse, outside children, infidelity. And a lot of these things come from the way that we managed emotions and the way that we handled family dynamics and all of those things that were not addressed, which you carry into adulthood. As a mom, me knowing that there were many things from my childhood that I carried into being an adult, and some of my decisions and choices, like, for example, making decisions based out of fear or based out of insecurity. You bring that into the partners you choose when you start dating. You bring that into your career or your business. Me being aware of that, I'm very open with my daughter, and we talk a lot about how she feels, what she thinks. And there are some things that I realize are off limits and she won't share with me as her mom. So she actually has a therapist going through all of this. We both signed up for a therapist to deal with this current pandemic, this situation. It's not something to be ashamed of. And I'll tell you something that I noticed, Eva. I speak in like the schools, and as a volunteer speaking in the schools, what I noticed is children are actually more open than we were to talk about mental health now. They don't have as much of the stigma. The issue comes when they speak to their parents and their parents shame them, making them feel isolated or different or other. And I've actually heard of, like, this is worst case scenario, children being threatened that they would get punished or beaten if they were depressed or talked about suicide. But the good news is that kids are more open to it, and the schools are open to doing emotional or mental health classes and courses to help them.
I have seen, like, my daughter's in the, what? That's sad that I have to think about it because she's home now. But she's in the 8th grade, and they're very, very open. The kids are very open about their feelings. They actually have a class on social and emotional learning. I'm like, that never, I couldn't have imagined anything like that as a kid. I could not. So I love the fact that they talk to each other now. That's really, really great. Jamie, what have you been noticing as a mom as far as dealing with mental health? I know that's something that you talk about professionally. Is it something that you advocate for as a mom? Of course, I'm sure you do, but just tell us how you manage that.
So most definitely, and I love the idea of having a therapist for your child. I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. Your children are little people, okay? And whether they're in elementary school or high school or in college, they're navigating life, and you're not going to always be there to fight their battles. So equipping your children with the necessary tools they need to emotionally and mentally handle and sustain in this life is essential. So I'm a big advocate for child therapy. In regards to my kid, I've had to come to terms with my own past as I parent my child. So my mother would often channel her frustration into a physical approach when dealing with parenting. And a lot of our Caribbean parents do that. I've actually written a blog post, it can't be found now, on the old website, talking about Caribbean parents should not slave beat their children. I think for me personally, I had to go through my own process of healing myself as a person before I can address becoming a better parent. And so I know that I am doing my best. My daughter, she lets me know this, but I've had to learn how to parent her in a new way, because oftentimes we rely on what we were taught, what we learned through osmosis. And I've had to read some books, because back in the day, your parents would be like, well, ain't nobody teach me how to do this. I ain't read no book for that. Well, now, listen, there's SocaMom.com. Okay, there's an app for that. There are books. This is and going back to what Seneca was saying, how the kids are talking. This is the information age. You can't say that you don't know. And if you don't know, you can find out. You have Google at your fingertips. If you want to be a better parent, you have that choice. And I think it's understanding what is healthy parenting and what's toxic parenting. And going back to what my mom used to, my mother beat me and I turned out okay. Okay, who told you turned out okay? Like, I really want to find out who really told you turned out okay. I've learned how to not be physically abusive with my child. That's something I don't do. I've learned how to allow her a safe space to talk about her feelings. I've also alerted her to know that if you can't come to me, you have your auntie, you have your cousins, and I talk to those people as well to let them know, my ground rules and my beliefs of how to give her advice, and still come back and let me know that she's not gonna break. They're not gonna break her trust, but at least so that I can be mindful when approaching her. Okay, if she's going through this, I'll give her respect and her space. But yeah, we gotta talk about that, yo. Who told you turn out okay?
I think that is so true because everyone says, I'm fine. No, you're not. No, you're not. Listen, my parents, professional people, right? They still grew up in an area and were educated in a time that you still reach your kids. It is what it is. That's how it works. But I will say that over time, my parents did learn that that was not okay. And my dad, to this day, still, it has been since my last spanking, it has been 40 years. No, 30 years. Y'all, I ain't 50 nothing. 30 years. And he still regrets it. Like, he remembers it. So imagine if, as a parent, you remember what you did and it still hurts you, what your kids might be feeling. So everyone is in this enclosed space. You have these things. It's almost like it's in your DNA now. When you're frustrated, you want to lash out. Even if it's not physical abuse, it might be emotional abuse, or it might be verbal abuse. Really quickly, because we're getting to the end of our session and I don't want to run into anybody else's, but what tools and tips would you give to a parent who does not want to fall back on those old ways during this crisis? I'm going to start with Seneca.
So what you just said, I have to talk about that. That's amazing that your father, you had that experience. For some of us, we don't have that experience. So we have to learn how to heal our inner child. And we're going to have to be okay with not getting that apology. Just wanted to touch on that because, it's something that I had to deal with, getting over not getting that apology. So I'd suggest for people, first of all, learn about mental health, right? Mental health is something that impacts all of us. Now, I know the studies say 1 in 5 people in America are affected by mental health, but that's based on who's diagnosed or whatever. The truth is we all have physical health, we all have mental health, and we need to learn to integrate our mental health into our primary physical care. So that's one thing. The other thing is normalizing the conversation. Like you said, sometimes you're not fine, and that's okay. It's learning how to have that conversation without, focusing on, I'm a strong woman, I'm a strong Black woman, and, all of this stuff. Strong Black women know that strength needs support. So get that support, reach out for it. It's not something to be ashamed about. It makes you stronger, right? And then the other thing is, outside of normalizing the conversation, it's taking that step outside of your comfort zone to actually talk to a therapist. Make that appointment, even if you're not going through a crisis. You make a dentist appointment if your teeth aren't hurting. You go to a dermatologist. You go to the GYN, even if you're not sick. You go to your primary care. Just make that appointment, step out of your comfort zone and see what you can uncover. Because what you learn, you can then model and teach your children.
We go get everything checked, except the one thing that runs everything else, we're getting checked. We don't check on our minds at all. We're like, we good. Really? Are you sure? Because our minds are very, very powerful. Like that stress can be why you need to go to the chiropractor and why you need to go and get everything else checked out. So that's a very, very good point. So, Jamie, what's your take on that?
I'm definitely going to promote therapy. We are people who love to, polish up the exterior, right? Get your hair done, your nails done, everything did. But yeah, what about your mind? What about your heart? So I'm definitely going to suggest that you tap into therapy. And now, yeah, you can say, well, we're on restricted movement and we're practicing social distancing. So how can I see a therapist? Well, there's an app for that. And on my recent episode with Seneca, we listed a host of free resources for you to reach out to a therapist, whether via phone or even via text. So you can go on jblog.com for more of that information on episode 34 for a host of different free resources. In addition to, you can also go on your insurance and find out a provider, a mental health provider, and different insurances have different structures, right? In addition to, I definitely want to piggyback off of what Seneca said on having these discussions, hence the reason for the podcast. Not just having these discussions with your children, but having those very difficult discussions with your partner, with your parents, with your coworkers, with your friends, and being honest about it. I think it's all about learning the approach. But first, before you can have a conversation with anyone else, you have to have that difficult conversation with yourself. So journaling helps. It's great to keep a journal. Meditating helps. It's great to practice breathing, especially when you're dealing with stressful situations and learning how to tap into your physical body and shake anxiety through breathing practices. And you can learn all of these things by changing your thought patterns today. You're not okay. You're stressed out. You're struggling through emotionally. And that is okay. We're all there. I'm there too. There is an app for that. There's a therapist for that. There's a friend you can reach out to. Please, I implore you, it is okay to not feel strong. It's okay to be weak sometimes. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel like you're crashing and stuck. That is absolutely normal. What's not normal is thinking about taking your life. What's not normal is taking out your frustration on your kids. What's not normal is, not going about your day as you should, right? So I implore you to seek out professional help. There is no shame or stigma in that. Trust me, there's not.
Thank you both so much for doing this with me. I really, really appreciate you and what you're offering to the community. I just did breathing exercise this morning because, like everybody else, I'm anxious around now. And you feel your heart racing. You feel like you can't breathe. You don't have a fever, so it's not COVID, but still, you can't breathe, your heart's racing, and then simple breathing exercises for a couple of minutes. And I check it on my phone. You can check on your heart rate on your phone. Everything calms down. It's amazing what you can do to help yourself just by using some of the resources. So make sure that you check out episode 34. In the show notes, you'll find the free resources. Am I correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yes. So you'll find the free resources because still it's going to take some time for our community to overcome the stigma of getting help. So get help anonymously. Look it up. Google it. See a reputable source. See what you can get done for yourself. So thanks again. I want you all to tell us where we can find you, how we can get in touch with you, and how we can hear more about what you're doing for the community. I'll start with Seneca.
Thank you. So I definitely think it's important for people during this time, especially during this time, that they're reaching out for support. Don't wait till after this is all over, then I'll reach out for support. Do it right now. I am offering people discounted therapy services online, short-term services. and they can reach out to me on social media at Ask Coach Sen. I am on all social media that, the frequent ones, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. So you can reach out to me there. You can also go on my website, senecawilliams.com. If you've listened to this or you've listened to the podcast, you're going to hear my email address is support@senecawilliams.com. If you email me, I'll give you information on how we can set up a confidential consultation call, and I can answer any questions that you have about therapy or mental health for you or your children and direct you to the proper place. I also have the Conquer Network, which is a monthly membership for entrepreneurs to deal with emotional wellness. Right now, a lot of people, their businesses have lost income, they're bleeding out money, and I want to help them through weekly seminars called Thriving in Transition to help them figure out what is their next best step during this and how to manage the feelings of loss or failure that they might be experiencing. So definitely follow me on social media, Ask Coach Sen.
Perfect. And the entrepreneurship portion of this is really, really important. We have a large community of entrepreneurs who are struggling right now. And Caribbean people don't ever want to show they're struggling. You might be broke, but your house is fantastic at Christmas, So we don't want to show the struggle. Make sure that you check out the entrepreneurship panel. There are entrepreneurs that are going to talk about that struggle. And please check out Coach Sen and her services, because if you're an entrepreneur, which seems to be in our DNA, please check her out. We don't want you struggling right now. So Jamie, tell us what you've got going on and how people can get to you.
So for a human experience from a Caribbean perspective, please visit my website, jbless.com. In addition to, if you're looking for a very real, very raw, very relatable weekly podcast with a mental health focus, I encourage you to become a Jaybird and listen to In My Head with Jay Bless. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and now on Pandora. So please subscribe. It is a weekly podcast with thoughts of from my own mind, from my own head, and a bunch of amazing guests who really are transparent about their own struggle. I'm talking about politicians and doctors and everyday people. So you will find something that you can get from every episode, some words, some piece of hope. So please become a Jaybird and subscribe to the In My Head podcast on your favorite podcast app.
Thank you. Thank you so much for everything that you all are doing. Check out the podcast. Honestly, I don't have a lot of time. So there's only a few podcasts that I listen to, and this is one of them. So add this one to your list. Make sure that you check out SenecaWilliams.com and get the help that you need. We need to come out of this stronger, better, or at least the same. Let's maintain. We can stay where we are. That is also perfectly fine. So thank you all. Isn't it though? Like, I was good before, so I'm just gonna maintain. We all know we maintain.
What even would that work?
You get to the club, you're like, I just want to maintain. I don't want to go above. I just need to maintain. So anyway, ladies, thank you so much for doing this and taking your time to do this and contributing to the community. We really, really appreciate it. To learn more about these ladies, and I know you'll want to, go to SocaMomSummit.com. We have all of their speaker pages up. They have their social media, their websites, everything that you need to get connected with them, you can find on SocaMom Summit. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. And we'll see you soon. Everybody take care.
Bye. Bye.